Photographer of the Year, let's hear it for Dan Shelley, Shellda Photos.
Hey everybody, welcome to the very first episode of the Shellda Podcast. Words I never thought I'd be saying, but here we are. So in this very first episode, what I would love to do is give you an overview of why the podcast, where did the idea come from, and what can you expect about being a listener and subscriber to the Shellda Podcast. So with that, let's first talk about how this idea came about. Recently, we just had the 2024 NXL World Cup, and while I was standing on the field, I always reflect back to the journey so far. These last 2 years being a paintball photographer have just been unreal. If you told the very young version of me 25 years ago when I first started playing paintball that I would be here as a photographer standing on the pro field taking photos and capturing memories of some of the best players in the world and some people I also looked up to, I would have thought you were crazy. So every time I step on that pro field, I have a moment of reflection of just like, wow, I try to soak it all in. I think about every single moment, and I start to process what this sport means to me. And it's such a cool moment of reflection because it helps center me. It helps bring me back to that moment. And so fast forward to World Cup, and I'm thinking, holy cow, like in literally just 2 short years, my life has completely changed due to paintball. I've been able to tap into the creative side of myself that I've missed for so long. And as I'm taking these photos throughout the weekend at World Cup, I was thinking there's got to be something else I can do for this incredible sport. There's got to be something else that I can help grow my mark and help grow the sport as a whole. And I remember in that moment, I remember thinking something that Oliver Lang actually said to me last year, my very first year. I think it was NXL Philly, the event that was in Pennsylvania. It was actually during the finals. I'm supposed to be on the pro field taking photos, and I look over and I see Oliver just sitting on a cooler in the pits area, just watching it. And I thought, what a really cool moment. Let me go over and just chat with Oliver for a little bit. And we have, talked throughout the years. So in that moment, when I'm supposed to be on the pro field, taking pictures of these incredible moments and capturing could be some incredible moments, Oliver and I just had a 20 or 30 minute conversation about paintball and about what it means to us in the incredible journeys that he and I both have been on. And he said something to me that has stuck ever since. And it's always just kind of been in the back of my mind. And it was, whatever anyone does, if you have the capability in paintball to contribute to help growing the sport, whether it's taking photos, it's just liking somebody's comment, it's sharing somebody's post on Facebook or Instagram, whatever it is, you're helping grow the sport because it's helping getting our sport in front of more viewers and in front of more people. And so from that moment, I kept thinking, man, there's got to be something else that I can do. And over the past season, I've thought about picking up like a camera and turning it on myself and creating like a vlog. But the thought of, walking around with a camera and that's just, I've tried it before. And I have nothing but respect for people like Ronnie that, are vloggers and content creators in that aspect. And I just kind of pushed that idea away and didn't really think about it much longer. And then at World Cup, I kept thinking, it came back, like that spark came back of like, there's got to be something else that I can do. And about a week later, after World Cup had ended, I was out having dinner with my wife Amanda. I was talking about, man, I'm missing creating. The photography is great. Like I love it. I get so much enjoyment from it. But there's something else that's just like itching of like there's something else I want to tap into to that creative part of my brain. And she was like, why don't you start a podcast? And my first thought was like, no, no, that's not it. Definitely not. There's no way I would be able to compete with, Marcelo and Tyler Play the Game and Ryan and Kyle of the Spick and Span Show and, the Paintball Nerd and of course everyone else that's out there. And so, like many good thoughts, I instantly pushed it away. That insecure moment came in of like, I can't do that. And then later that night, I'm laying in bed trying to fall asleep, and like it just kept creeping back in. Like, oh man, why not? And I kept thinking, wait, if I am scared to do this and I'm afraid to do this, isn't that the exact reason to start a podcast? Now, I've heard so many people over the years of if you are afraid to do something, that's the exact reason to fulfill it. And that's something that I've tried to think about over the past year or so is, man, if there's something that my instant gut reaction tells me like, ooh, that's really scary, don't do that, to question it and be like, well, why not? Do you have a reason to not do that? And so, I spent majority of that night because I couldn't fall asleep. My mind started to race with all these different podcast ideas and podcast names and topics. And I told myself in that moment, you know what, let's do this. Because if I think 30, 40 years down the road, or if I look back, I'm going to regret not taking a chance on something that I have the opportunity to do right now in this moment. And so, like I said, I spent the rest of that night on my phone, just jotting down different ideas for the podcast, coming up with names, researching different topics, rewatching podcasts that I thoroughly enjoy watching, and just really piecing about, how does the interviewer talk? What are some of the questions? What's the style of it? What's the style that I want to go for? And I thought, you know what? Let's just do it. The first handful of episodes are probably going to be pretty bad. I think Marcelo often talks about looking back at the very first few episodes of the Play the Game podcast and how cringeworthy they are. But just like anything, if you don't start, you're never going to move forward. And so if I think back to the very first photos I took, and if I go back and look at them, they're so cringeworthy. But if I didn't do that, if I didn't start that process, my photography career wouldn't have skyrocketed like it has. So that's a little bit of a background of why and where the Shellda Podcast idea came from. Now, what specifically can you, the listener and the viewer, expect from this podcast? Well, something that's always been fascinating for me is the why. No matter what it is, whether it's paintball or not, whenever I'm talking to friends, coworkers, fellow, paintball media or players, I'm always so curious on the why. Why did you choose that specific headband? How did that thought come to fruition? Why did you choose that mask combo build? And so there's so many other podcasts out there that focus on what got you into paintball. How did you start into paintball? But I've always been curious, why? Why did you get into the sport? But more specifically, I really want to know from players from all sorts of level, from the media, from different brands out there, is why today? Why every weekend are you showing up to the field? There's so many different things that we could be fulfilling our life with. There's so many different things that are vying for our attention. Why paintball? And so that's one of the questions that you're going to hear throughout my shows are why. I'll be asking my guests why paintball. And then sort of piggybacking on that why is what inspires you week in and week out to continue to come back and spend your hard-earned money on this incredible sport. And then also, I've always been a person who's really enjoyed sort of the behind the curtains look at just sports in life in general. So I've always been a really big fan of the show Hard Knocks on HBO because it gives a behind the scenes look to these incredible athletes, right? And so I'm going to try to peel the curtain behind guests on the show and ask, what do you do? What's your 9 to 5? Where do you live? What is that like? Because I think we often see these players on the biggest screen or on the biggest stage on the pro field, and they're superstars to a lot of us. But a lot of people don't know that they're actually going back to their hometown and they're having to work a real job, some multiple jobs, just to even make that pro career happen. So I really, really want to tap into that. And then something I would love to do is we've got so many incredible paintball media out there, from photographers to videographers, writers, just so many different content creators. I'm planning on bringing on a wide variety of content creators throughout the journey of the show and get a peek into their brain. Why are they creating content? What inspires them to create content? What's their goal for their content? And then I also want to ask some of our guests is, what are some ideas you have for paintball? What are some ideas you have for paintball media? Where would you like to see paintball media go in the future? So there's a few different things that we have cooking for the show. And then something else I'm still working out the kinks on is giving you an inside look into my process, into how I edit photos, why I edit a certain photo, why I choose to pick a certain photo over a different one, and how does that go from the decision from why does it go from my camera to my computer to why do I ultimately choose to post that. And so what I'm going to do is try to show you 1 or 2 photos each week of that. And then if I have any paintball media come on the show, I want to ask them the same question. So maybe find a particular photo or a clip that they took, and let's get into the brains and ask them the why behind it. And so with that, I'm actually going to pull up a few photos that I took from this past weekend at Outlaw Paintball here in Austin, Texas, and go over a photo that I took and show you the inside behind it. So this is a series of photos that I took of a very young player. His name is Amari. He just started playing, I believe, a month or 2 ago. And whenever I'm on the field scanning, looking for pictures or looking for moments, what I'm looking for is what's the story. I'm not out there just, shooting to take different shots just to post my social media. The most important thing for me is when I'm taking photos is what's the story behind it. And so when I went over to this field and I saw Amari, he was wearing a jersey that I had never seen him wear before. And it's actually from an older team here in Austin called Austin Hypnotic. I think they've disbanded, and I think most of them are known as Cap City Charge. And so I thought, how is this new player wearing an old jersey also of another player that's not him? And so the first thing I recognized was the name on the back of that jersey is Connor Sanders. And Connor is a player in the Austin scene who has just completely exploded in the past season or two. He used to play for Austin Hypnotic, and this past season, he was just a beast playing for Cap City Charge throughout USXPL, and I think he played also on the NXL scene as well. And so this past, I think for World Cup, Connor was actually invited to play for Shut Up We're Trying, I think for their semi-pro or their D2 team. So he's just completely skyrocketed. And so when I saw Amari wearing his jersey, I realized, holy cow, Connor actually signed that jersey. And so I thought this would be a really cool moment to show that we've got a local kid in Connor who has just starting to really go through the ranks. And we now have players just a few years younger than him that are also looking up to him as already. And so the picture that I ended up landing on, I believe was this one that I posted. It was actually this one. So I took about 5 or 6 photos here because it was super quick. And I didn't choose this one because a lot of his body was cut off. We were getting closer. I liked the framing of this shot. But another player here, this is one of the Oni coaches, I believe, and Sergio, he was taking up a little bit too much of that frame. I thought I was going to land with this one. And then as I kept going, I realized, I think this is my shot right here. And so what I did is that you can see this was actually cropped in quite a bit. And I think I even tried to get rid of some of his elbow. And so I ended up framing Amari here on the left side, just because I always like to frame my subjects on either side of the photo. I try to save my centering of my pictures for like really special shots. And I believe I left it right about here because I liked it. He is representing, of course, my brand. He's got the the Shellda extra long t-shirt, the undershirt, and then I always try to play around my colors. And so I think where I'm different from some photographers is some photographers will just do a mass edit for all of their photos. I actually individually edit every single photo. And so I'm always playing around with my exposure over here, with contrast, playing around with the different shadows to highlight different parts of the photo. And then if there's like a really special photo, I'll go way deeper down into color grading it, but I usually focus on really trying to dial in the lighting and the color for my photo. And then that's it. And so this is a photo that I posted yesterday, and it was pretty cool. Once Amari saw this, he actually sent me a DM after this, thanking me for the photo and just talking about how thankful he is to be a part of the paintball community. And he even said to me, he's like, hey, one day you're going to take a photo of me on the pro field. So it's cool to see that Amari's already thinking about where he wants to take his paintball career. So a pretty cool moment. So something like that is what I'm going to be doing for each one of these episodes. Is I'm going to pull up a photo or two and talk through my process and talk about how I edit it, why I edit it, and why do I ultimately choose that one to be uploaded to my social media. So with that, this very first episode, it might be quicker than most. I just wanted to introduce myself, introduce the podcast, and get this thing off the ground because I'm really excited to continue to contribute to the paintball media and continue to give you more content to digest throughout the off season and the season. So if there's any guests that you would love to see on the show, please, if you're listening, head over to YouTube, comment below some guests, shoot me some DMs, and we'll work on getting a pretty solid list of guests here in the future. So with that, thanks for stopping by to the very first episode of the Shellda Podcast, and we'll catch you next time. See ya.